Chicago never forgives. At 39, Kael Vucari ruled the city's underworld from blood-stained glass towers, while prosecutors vanished and rival gangs crumbled before battles even began. Then one rain-soaked night, a trembling 21-year-old woman named Selene Vale was dragged into his study as payment for her stepfather's debt. Desperate to save her dying mother, she agreed to marry the monster everyone feared. But when Kael lifted her veil 3 days later, those green eyes shattered 18 years of carefully buried guilt. Because the terrified bride standing before him wasn't just another transaction. She was the daughter of the man he failed to save. If you want to see how far love can survive when built on lies and bloodshed, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kael Vucari's penthouse office, like bullets trying to break through bulletproof glass. Lightning cracked across the Chicago skyline, illuminating the city he owned in violent flashes of white. He stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, watching the storm devour the streets 40 stories below. Behind him, 2 of his enforcers dragged something into the room. Not something. Someone. "Boss!" Victor's voice cut through the thunder. "The debt." Kael didn't turn around. He could hear her breathing, fast, shallow, terrified. "Leave us." The door clicked shut. Silence filled the space between them like poison gas slowly leaking into a sealed room. Kael counted to 10 before he finally turned around. The girl stood in the center of his office, soaked to the bone. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet strands. Her clothes hung off her thin frame like she'd been drowning for days. But it was her eyes that made him pause. Green, bright, defiant green despite the fear radiating off her in waves. She couldn't have been more than 21. Maybe younger. Young enough that she should have been worrying about college exams and bad boyfriends, not standing in a mafia boss's office at 2 in the morning with rain dripping onto imported Italian marble. "What's your name?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. She flinched. "Selene." "Selene what?" "Vale." The word barely made it past her lips. Kael moved toward his desk, each footstep echoing like a gunshot in the quiet. He picked up a folder, opened it. The numbers inside made his jaw tighten. "Your stepfather stole $473,000 from my organization." He looked up. "Where is he?" "I don't know." "Try again." "I don't know." Her voice cracked. "He disappeared 2 weeks ago, took everything, left us with nothing." "Us?" "Me and my mother." Kael studied her face. She wasn't lying. Fear had a specific flavor when mixed with truth, and he'd tasted it enough times to recognize the difference. "Your mother sick?" Selene's hands trembled at her sides. "Cancer, stage 4. She has maybe 3 months without treatment. Less than that if—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "If the stress kills her first. And you came here instead of running. Where would I run?" Something sharp flashed behind those green eyes. "You people always find what you're looking for. You people." Kael set the folder down, walked around the desk until he stood less than 6 feet away from her. "You think you know what kind of man I am? I know your name." She lifted her chin despite the terror still shaking through her bones. "Everyone knows your name." "Then you know I don't forgive debts." "I'm not asking you to forgive anything." The words came out stronger now, desperate but steady. "I'm asking you to let me pay it back. Give me time. I'll work. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt my mother. She didn't do anything wrong." Kael almost laughed. Almost. Because he'd heard this speech before, dozens of times, hundreds maybe. People begging for mercy they didn't deserve, making promises they couldn't keep, offering things they didn't have. But something about the way she said it made him stop. Maybe it was the rain still dripping from her hair. Maybe it was the way she stood there, shaking but refusing to look away. Maybe it was those eyes. He turned back toward the window, watched lightning split the sky in half. "You can't pay back $500,000, Selene. Not in 1 lifetime." "Then take 2 lifetimes." Her voice broke. "Take 10. I don't care. Just let her live." The silence stretched so long she probably thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold enough to frost the glass in front of him. "There's one way to settle this debt." He heard her breath catch. Marry me. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. What? She whispered it so quietly he almost didn't hear. Kael turned around, looked at her straight on. Marry me. Become my wife. Your mother gets the best treatment money can buy. Private doctors, experimental drugs, whatever she needs for as long as she needs it. Selene stared at him like he'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. And if I say no, then the debt gets collected the old-fashioned way. He didn't blink. Starting with your mother's hospital room. The color drained from her face. You're insane. I'm practical. You don't even know me. I know enough. He moved closer, close enough to see the pulse hammering in her throat. You're loyal, desperate, willing to sacrifice yourself for someone you love. That makes you useful. Useful. She repeated the word like it tasted like poison. That's what you want? A useful wife? I want a wife who won't ask questions, who'll stand beside me when I need her and disappear when I don't, who understands that this is a transaction, not a love story. Selene's hands curled into fists. For a second, Kael thought she might actually hit him. Instead, she laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound that made something uncomfortable twist in his chest. How long? What? How long do I have to stay married to you before the debt is paid? Kael considered lying, considered telling her a year, 5 years, something that sounded almost reasonable, but he'd never been good at lying to himself. As long as I decide. Her face went pale again. So forever. Maybe. And my mother? Treatment starts tomorrow. Best oncologist in the country. I'll have him flown in tonight. Selene closed her eyes. Her whole body swayed like she might collapse. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but it had been buried under something harder, colder. I want it in writing, the treatment, the protection, all of it. Done. And I want to see my mother whenever I want. Fine. And if you hurt her, her voice dropped to something dangerous. If you touch her, I'll kill you myself. I don't care what happens to me after. Kael almost smiled. Almost. Understood. She stared at him for a long time. He could see her mind working, calculating, trying to find a way out that didn't exist. Finally, she nodded. Okay. Okay. I'll marry you. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like he'd just signed his own death warrant in blood. 3 days later, Selene stood in front of a full-length mirror wearing a white dress that cost more than her mother's house. The room around her looked like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, roses everywhere, their scent so thick it made her nauseated. A woman she'd never met before adjusted the veil with practiced efficiency. You look beautiful, dear. Selene didn't respond. Couldn't, because beautiful felt like the wrong word for what she was about to do. The door opened. Victor stepped inside, the same enforcer who dragged her into Kael's office 3 nights ago. It's time. Her legs almost gave out. The woman steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Deep breath, sweetheart. Selene sucked in air that tasted like roses and regret. Then she walked. The ceremony took place in a private estate outside the city. No guests, no family, just Kael's people lining the walls like armed statues watching an execution. Because that's what this felt like. An execution dressed up in white lace and organ music. The doors opened. Selene forced herself to move forward. 1 step, then another. Her heels clicked against polished floors that probably cost more than her entire life up until this moment. At the end of the aisle, Kael waited. He wore a black suit that fit him like it had been designed by someone who understood how to make a dangerous man look even more lethal. His dark hair was swept back. His jaw was clean-shaven. He looked like every warning her mother had ever given her about men who smiled with their mouths, but never their eyes. Except Kael wasn't smiling at all. He just stood there, watching her approach like a predator tracking wounded prey. When she finally reached him, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the bouquet. The officiant started talking. Words about love and commitment and forever that meant absolutely nothing in this room. Selene didn't hear any of it. All she could focus on was Kael's face, the hard lines, the cold eyes. the complete absence of anything resembling human emotion. This man was going to own her. For how long, she didn't know. But standing here in this dress, surrounded by men with guns hidden under expensive suits, she understood something with brutal clarity. She'd just sold herself to save someone who might die anyway. "Do you take this woman?" "I do." Kael's voice cut through the officiant's speech like a knife through silk. The officiant blinked, cleared his throat, turned to Selene. "And do you—" "I do." She said it fast, before she could change her mind, before survival instinct could override desperation. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss—" "We're done here." Kael's words were final. The officiant stammered something and backed away. Selene stood frozen as Kael reached for her veil. His fingers brushed against the delicate fabric. For a second, she thought he might just leave it down, might spare her this final humiliation. Then he lifted it, and everything stopped. His hand went rigid against the veil. His entire body locked up like someone had just put a bullet in his spine. Selene watched his face transform, watched color drain from his skin, watched his eyes go wide with something that looked almost like horror. "What?" She started to speak, but Kael wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring, past her eyes, past her face, into something she couldn't see. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. When he finally spoke, his voice came out strangled, broken. "Nikolai." The word was barely a whisper. Selene frowned. "What?" But Kael had already stepped back. His hand fell away from the veil like it had burned him. He turned to Victor without another word. "Get her to the car." Then he walked away. Just turned around and left her standing at the altar in a wedding dress, with a ring on her finger and absolutely no idea what the hell had just happened. Victor appeared at her elbow. "Ma'am, this way." "What just—" "Now, ma'am." She followed because she didn't know what else to do. The car ride back to the city happened in complete silence. Kael sat on the opposite side of the back seat, staring out the window with his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. Every time she tried to speak, he held up one hand. "Stop." So she stopped. By the time they pulled up to the penthouse, Selene's nerves had been replaced with something sharper. Anger. She'd just married a stranger to save her mother's life. The least he could do was look at her. The elevator ride up felt like it lasted hours. When the doors finally opened, Kael stepped out first. She followed him into a space that looked more like an art gallery than a home. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces. No warmth, no life. "Your room is down the hall, third door on the left." Selene blinked. "My room?" "Yes." "We're not—" "No." He still wasn't looking at her. "We're not." "Then why did you marry me?" Finally, he turned, and the expression on his face made her take a step back. Because it wasn't anger, it was grief, raw, overwhelming, barely controlled. "Go to your room, Selene." "Not until you tell me what's going on." "It's none of your business." "I just married you. That makes it my business." His eyes flashed. "You married me to save your mother. That was the deal. Everything else—" He stopped, breathed hard through his nose. "Everything else doesn't concern you." "You said a name. At the altar. Nikolai." She watched his face carefully. "Who is that?" Something cracked behind his eyes. "Someone dead." The words hit her like a physical blow. Before she could respond, Kael walked past her toward a door at the end of the hall. It slammed shut with enough force to rattle the artwork on the walls. Selene stood alone in the massive living room, still wearing her wedding dress, trying to process what the hell she'd just gotten herself into. Shake. The first week passed in a fog of silence and expensive furniture. Selene barely saw Kael. He left early, came back late. When he was home, he locked himself in his study and didn't come out. She spent most of her time visiting her mother at the hospital. True to his word, Kael had arranged everything. Private room, best doctors, treatment that actually seemed to be working. Her mother looked better already. The color was coming back to her face. The pain lines around her eyes had started to soften. "You look different," her mother said one afternoon. Selene forced a smile. "Different how?" "Older." "I got married, Mom." That ages a person. Her mother reached for her hand. Is he good to you? Selene thought about lying, thought about saying yes, everything's perfect, don't worry. Instead, she said, he barely speaks to me. Maybe that's better than the alternative. Maybe. But sitting there holding her mother's hand, watching machines pump poison into her veins, in the hope of killing something worse, Selene couldn't shake the feeling that she'd traded one nightmare for another. That night, she returned to the penthouse to find Kael standing in the kitchen. It was the first time she'd seen him in 3 days. He was pouring whiskey into a glass with hands that weren't quite steady. You're home early, she said. He didn't look up. Couldn't work. Shocking. His eyes cut toward her. Excuse me? Nothing. She moved toward the refrigerator. I'll be in my room. Selene. She stopped. How's your mother? The question surprised her. Better? The treatment is working. He nodded, drank, poured another glass. She should have walked away. Should have gone to her room and pretended this conversation never happened. Instead, she heard herself say, "Why did you really marry me?" Kael's hand tightened around the glass. We've been through this. No, you gave me a reason, but it wasn't the truth. And you think you deserve the truth? I think I deserve to know why you looked at me like you'd seen a ghost. Silence. Then, so quietly, she almost didn't hear it. Because I did. Selene's breath caught. What? But Kael was already walking away, glass in hand, back rigid. The study door slammed shut, and Selene was alone again. 2 weeks into the marriage, everything changed. It started with a nightmare. Selene woke up to the sound of someone screaming. For a second, she thought it was coming from outside. Then she realized it was coming from down the hall, from Kael's room. She should have stayed in bed, should have put a pillow over her head and pretended she didn't hear anything. Instead, she found herself walking toward his door. Another scream, this one worse. The sound of a grown man being torn apart from the inside. She pushed the door open. Kael thrashed in his bed like he was fighting something invisible. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His hands clawed at the sheets hard enough to tear fabric. No! The word came out choked. Don't! Please! Selene moved before thinking. She sat on the edge of the bed, reached for his shoulder. Kael, wake up! He exploded. His hand shot out and grabbed her throat. 1 second she was sitting. The next she was on her back with his full weight crushing her into the mattress and his fingers wrapped around her windpipe. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing her. Kael, she could barely get the word out. It's me. His grip tightened. Black spots started dancing across her vision. She did the only thing she could think of. She stopped fighting, went completely still, and whispered, It's okay. You're safe. Something in her voice cut through whatever nightmare held him. His eyes focused, really focused. He saw her face, saw his hand around her throat, saw what he was doing. Horror crashed across his features. He let go so fast she gasped, rolled away from her, stumbled out of bed and backed into the wall like he couldn't get far enough away. Fuck! His voice came out destroyed. Selene, I didn't... She sat up, coughed. Her throat felt like it had been crushed. It's fine. It's not fine. I almost... But you didn't. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Because instead of running, instead of screaming, instead of doing any of the sensible things a person should do after almost being strangled, she just sat there, looking at him, really looking, at the sweat, the trembling, the absolute devastation in his eyes. Who's Nikolai? She asked quietly. Kael's face went white. Get out. No. Selene. You said his name, at the wedding, just now in your sleep. You keep saying it. She stood up, moved closer despite the warning in his eyes. Who was he? Someone I couldn't save. The words came out like broken glass. Selene stopped. What does that have to do with me? Kael looked at her for a long time. Then he said something that made the entire world tilt sideways. He was your father. The floor disappeared beneath her feet. What? Nikolai Marchek. Your real father. Not the piece of shit who stole from me and left you to clean up his mess. Your actual father. Kael's voice was hollow. He's dead. Has been for 18 years, and I'm the reason why. Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stand there while her entire reality collapsed. You're lying. I wish I was. My father... She stopped, started again. My mother never... Your mother probably didn't want you to know. Kael moved toward a drawer, pulled out a photograph, handed it to her with shaking fingers. Here. Selene looked down. The photograph showed two men, one older, one teenager, both covered in blood. The younger one had his arm around the older one's shoulders. They were smiling despite the blood, despite whatever hell they'd just survived. She recognized the younger one immediately, Kael. Maybe 17, maybe younger, but definitely him. The older man had kind eyes, a strong jaw, dark hair, and the same green eyes staring back at her from every mirror. No, he. His name was Nikolai Marchek. He worked for my family, saved my life more times than I can count. When I was 16, someone set us up. We got ambushed in a basement. He carried me out while bullets tore through the walls, took 2 shots himself, almost died. Kael's voice was mechanical, like he was reciting facts to keep from feeling them. 3 years later, my father had him executed for treason. Why? Because someone lied. Someone inside our organization convinced my father that Nikolai was selling information to the Russians. It wasn't true. But by the time we figured that out, he stopped, breathed. He was already dead. Selene's hands were shaking so badly the photograph almost slipped through her fingers. And you. I was there. My father made me watch. Made me stand there while they put a bullet in the only real father I'd ever had. His eyes were wet now. Nikolai's last words were about you, about his little girl. He made me promise to find you, protect you, make sure you were okay. So you married me. The words came out flat. Dead. I didn't know it was you, not until I lifted the veil. But when I saw your eyes, his voice cracked. I knew. Selene looked down at the photograph again, at the man who died 18 years ago, the man her mother had never spoken about, the man whose eyes she'd inherited. Does my mother know? That I married you? No. I've kept my distance from her on purpose. If she recognized me, he stopped. It would destroy her all over again. So you've been lying to both of us. Yes. At least he didn't try to deny it. Selene set the photograph down carefully, looked at Kael, really looked at him. At the guilt eating him alive from the inside, at the grief he'd been carrying for 18 years, at the desperate, broken promise he'd been trying to keep. She should have hated him, should have screamed, should have run. Instead, she heard herself ask, what was he like? Kael's eyes went wide. What? My father, Nikolai. What was he like? For a long time, Kael didn't answer. Then he started talking, and once he started, he couldn't stop. He told her everything. About Nikolai teaching him how to shoot, how to think, how to survive in a world that wanted to devour them both. About the jokes, the late-night conversations, the way Nikolai could make Kael laugh even when everything felt hopeless. He told her about the ambush, about Nikolai's blood soaking through Kael's shirt while they stumbled through darkness toward safety. About the way Nikolai had smiled even while dying and said, "Don't let them make you into something cold, kid." He told her about the execution, about the sound of the gunshot, about collapsing next to Nikolai's body and screaming until his throat bled, about spending 18 years searching for Nikolai's daughter without even knowing what she looked like, about the promise that had haunted him every single day since. By the time he finished, dawn light was spilling through the windows, and Selene was crying, not for herself, for the father she never knew, for the boy Kael used to be before guilt destroyed him, for the impossible situation they'd both been thrown into by people who died before either of them could get answers. She crossed the space between them, stood in front of him, looked up at his destroyed face. Then she did something neither of them expected. She hugged him. Kael went rigid, like he'd forgotten what human touch felt like when it wasn't violent. Selene, shut up. She held him tighter, felt him trembling, felt 18 years of grief trying to break through his ribs. Finally, his arms came up, wrapped around her, and he buried his face against her shoulder and shook apart. They stayed like that until the sun climbed higher, two broken people holding each other together. bound by a ghost neither of them could save. After that night, everything shifted. Kael stopped hiding, started having breakfast with her, asked about her mother, actually listened when she answered. Selene stopped treating him like the monster everyone said he was, started seeing the man underneath, the one still trying to keep a dying promise alive. It should have stayed simple. Gratitude, understanding, maybe even friendship, but nothing about them had ever been simple. 3 weeks after the wedding, Selene found herself standing in Kael's study while he worked. She'd brought him coffee, told herself that was the only reason she was there. He looked up from his laptop, smiled slightly. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." "Thank you." Their fingers brushed when she handed him the mug. Neither of them pulled away. The air between them changed, got heavier, more dangerous. Kael's eyes dropped to her mouth. Selene's breath caught. "I should go," she whispered. "Yeah." But she didn't move, and neither did he. The coffee mug hit the desk. Kael stood, crossed the space between them in 2 steps. His hand came up, cupped her face. "Tell me to stop." She should have. Instead, she leaned into his palm. "I can't." He kissed her like he'd been drowning, and she was the first breath of air. Deep, desperate, devastating. Selene grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer, kissed him back with everything she'd been trying not to feel. Because somewhere between the nightmares and the grief and the impossible truth they'd been circling, she'd fallen for him. For the broken man trying to be good. For the monster who'd never touched her without permission. For the promise keeper still haunted by a ghost. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Kael pressed his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake. I know. We can't. I know." But the next night, when she heard him screaming from another nightmare, she went to him again, and this time, when he pulled her into bed, she stayed. They talked until sunrise, about Nikolai, about her childhood, about the life Kael had lived and the things he'd done to survive it. "Do you regret marrying me?" she asked. He looked at her for a long time. "No. Even though especially because you're his daughter." His hand found hers in the darkness. "It means I finally kept my promise. By trapping me in a marriage I didn't want? By keeping you alive." She should have argued, should have pointed out how fucked up that logic was. Instead, she laced her fingers through his and held on. Over the next month, they fell into something that almost looked like a life. Morning coffee, late-night conversations, stolen kisses in hallways when no one was watching. Kael took her to her mother's appointments, held her hand while doctors delivered updates. Never complained when she needed to stay late. Selene learned the truth about his world. The violence, the blood, the impossible choices he made every day just to keep breathing. She didn't run. She stayed. And somewhere in the middle of all that grief and guilt and impossible history, they fell in love. Real love. The kind that terrified them both, because they knew better than anyone how quickly love could be destroyed. 2 months after the wedding, Kael came home to find Selene standing in his study. She'd been looking for a pen. Instead, she'd found a locked drawer. And inside that drawer, a file, with her name on it. He knew the second he saw her face, knew exactly what she'd found. "Selene, you knew." Her voice shook. "From the beginning, you knew exactly who I was." "Yes. The debt, the marriage, all of it, you planned it." "No, the debt was real. Your stepfather did steal from me, but when Victor brought you in," he stopped, forced himself to continue. "I recognized your mother's name, put the pieces together, realized who you were before you even walked into my office." Selene stared at him like he'd just put a knife in her chest. "So everything, every word, Her voice broke. "It was all a lie." "No, Selene, listen to me. You used me. You married me because of him, because of some promise you made to a dead man. Not because you wanted to help, not because—" Tears spilled down her face. "Not because any of it was real. It is real. What I feel for you. Don't." She held up a shaking hand. "Don't you dare." Kael tried to move closer. She backed away like he was toxic. "Everything I told you was true, about your father, about the promise, about loving me?" Her laugh was broken. How can I believe anything you say when you've been lying from the start? I never lied about my feelings. You lied about everything else. That's enough. She turned toward the door. Kael grabbed her wrist. Not hard, just desperate. Please, let me explain. Selene looked down at his hand, then up at his face, and slapped him hard enough to split both their hearts open. Don't ever touch me again. Then she walked out. By morning, she was gone. Kael stood in the empty study, staring at the door Selene had just walked through. His cheek still burned where she'd hit him. The sound of the slap echoed in his skull like a gunshot that wouldn't stop ringing. He should have gone after her, should have dragged her back, made her listen. Instead, he just stood there while his phone buzzed in his pocket. Victor's name flashed across the screen. What? She left the building 10 minutes ago, grabbed a taxi heading south. You want me to? No. The word came out harder than he intended. Let her go. Silence on the other end. Then, boss, if she talks, she won't. You sure about that? Kael closed his eyes, saw Selene's face, the betrayal, the devastation. Yeah, I'm sure. He hung up, poured himself a drink, then another, then stopped counting. By sunrise, the bottle was empty, and he still couldn't feel anything except the ghost of her hand across his face. But Selene showed up at her mother's house just as dawn broke over the neighborhood. Her hand shook so badly she could barely get the key into the lock. Inside, everything looked exactly the same as it had 2 months ago. Before the debt, before the wedding, before her entire life had been ripped apart and stitched back together wrong. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up. Afterward, she sat on the cold tile floor with her back against the tub and tried to breathe through the pain cracking her ribs open from the inside. He'd lied. From the very beginning, every word, every touch, every moment she'd started to believe he might actually care about her. All of it built on a foundation of lies and guilt and a promise made to a dead man. She pressed her palms against her eyes hard enough to see stars. Stupid. She'd been so fucking stupid. Falling for a man like Kael Vucari. Thinking she could be anything more than a transaction. A piece moved across a board in a game she didn't even know she was playing. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Saw Kael's name. Deleted it without reading. It buzzed again and again and again. She turned it off. Then she curled up on the bathroom floor and let herself break apart where no one could see. 3 days passed in a blur of silence and bad sleep. Selene avoided everyone, ignored calls, pretended she didn't exist. On the 4th day, her mother came home from the hospital. The treatment was working. The doctor said she might actually make it, might actually survive this thing that should have killed her months ago. All because of Kael. The thought made Selene want to scream. You look terrible, sweetheart. Her mother settled onto the couch with a blanket across her lap. What happened? Nothing. Don't lie to me. Selene looked at her mother, really looked. At the woman who'd raised her alone, who'd never mentioned Nikolai Marchek, who'd buried that entire part of her life so deep Selene had never even known to ask questions. Why didn't you tell me about my father? Her mother went pale. What? Nikolai, why didn't you tell me? The silence stretched so long Selene thought her mother might not answer at all. Finally, how did you find out? Does it matter? Selene, he died 18 years ago. You never said a word. Her mother's hands trembled in her lap. I was protecting you. From what? The truth? From that world, from the violence, from everything that killed him. Her mother's voice cracked. I didn't want you anywhere near it. So you lied. I kept you safe. Safe. Selene laughed bitterly. Look how well that worked out. Her mother reached for her hand. Selene pulled away. Tell me about him? Sweetheart? Tell me about my father, now, or I walk out and you never see me again. The threat hung between them like smoke. Her mother closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. He was good. Too good for that life. But he was born into it, and he didn't know how to leave. She took a shaky breath. We met when I was 23. He was working for the Vucari family. I knew what he was, what he did. But he was gentle with me, kind. He made me feel safe even though everything around us was dangerous. What happened? We fell in love. I got pregnant. He wanted to leave, start over somewhere far away from Chicago, from the families, from all of it. Her mother's voice dropped to almost nothing. But they wouldn't let him go, especially not the Vukaris. He was too valuable, too loyal. Selene's chest tightened. So he stayed. He stayed for a while. You were born. He tried to be there for us. But it got harder, more dangerous. One day he came home covered in blood and told me we had to leave. Immediately. No questions. Tears spilled down her mother's face. I packed a bag, grabbed you. We were supposed to meet him at a motel outside the city. But he never showed up. No, he called from a payphone, said something had gone wrong, that they thought he was a traitor, that if I loved him, I needed to disappear, change my name, raise you somewhere they'd never find us. Her mother's voice broke completely. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. Selene felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You ran. I ran. Changed my name. Moved 3 times in 2 years. Eventually settled here under a new identity. Started over. Her mother looked at her with devastated eyes. And I never told you because I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe. I married into the family that killed him, Mom. The words landed like a bomb. Her mother's face crumpled. What? Kael Vukari, the man I married. His father ordered the execution. Kael was there. He watched. Selene's voice was hollow, and he knew exactly who I was the whole time. Her mother made a sound like something dying. No, he married me because he promised my father he'd protect me, because he's been carrying that guilt for 18 years, and I was his chance to finally make it right. Selene stood up. Couldn't sit still anymore. So congratulations, Mom. All that running, all those years of hiding, and I still ended up exactly where you tried to keep me from going. Selene, but she was already walking toward the door. I need air. She left before her mother could respond. Kael hadn't slept in 4 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Selene's face. The betrayal. The pain. He'd fucked up. Spectacularly. And now she was gone, and he had no idea how to fix it. Victor found him in his office at 3 in the morning, going through surveillance footage like a man possessed. Boss, you need to sleep. I need to find her. She's at her mother's house, has been since she left. We've had eyes on the place the whole time. Kael's hand stilled on the keyboard. Is she okay? Define okay. Fair point. He rubbed his face. 4 days of stubble scratched against his palms. When was the last time he'd showered? Eaten? Given a single fuck about anything except the woman who'd walked out of his life? Anyone approach the house? No one. It's clean. Victor paused. You want me to bring her back? No. Boss, I said no. If she wants to stay gone, she stays gone. Victor studied him for a long moment. You're in love with her? It wasn't a question. Kael didn't answer, didn't need to. For what it's worth, Victor said quietly, I think she loved you too. Loved. Past tense. Kael closed his laptop, stood up. Every muscle in his body ached like he'd been beaten with a crowbar. Get me everything on Colombo. Victor's expression shifted. Mateo Colombo? Why? Because he's been too quiet. And when men like him go quiet, it means they're planning something. You think he's going to make a move? I think he's been waiting for me to show weakness, and I just gave him exactly that. Victor's jaw tightened. I'll pull his file. And double security on Selene's mother's house. Subtle. She doesn't need to know they're there, but if anyone even looks at that house wrong, understood. Victor left. Kael stood alone in his office, watching the city wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there, Selene was hurting. Because of him. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it except keep her alive, even if she hated him for it. Tot. On the 7th day, Selene finally turned her phone back on. 43 missed calls. All from Kael. 26 texts. Same source. She deleted them without reading, then blocked his number. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like cutting off her own arm. She was sitting in her childhood bedroom staring at nothing when her mother knocked softly on the door. Can I come in? Sure. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, I was wrong. Selene looked at her. About what? About keeping the truth from you. About thinking I could protect you by pretending your father never existed. Her mother's hands twisted in her lap. You deserved to know, even if it hurt, even if it was dangerous. You deserved the truth. Yeah, I did. And Kael... I don't want to talk about him. Too bad. We're talking about him anyway. Her mother's voice was firm. Did he hurt you? What? No, he never see... Selene stopped, shook her head. Not physically. But he lied to you. Yes. About who you were. Yes. Did he lie about caring for you? The question hit harder than it should have. Selene thought about Kael's face when he talked about Nikolai. The grief, the guilt, the desperate need to make things right. She thought about the way he'd held her during nightmares, the gentle way he touched her like she was something precious, the broken sound he made when she kissed him. I don't know, she whispered. I think you do. Mom, your father loved me, really loved me, but he also loved that life, the violence, the power, the brotherhood. Her mother looked at her with sad eyes, and in the end, that love got him killed. So you think I should stay away from Kael? I think you need to decide what kind of life you can live with, because men like that don't change. They can't. It's woven into who they are. She reached over, squeezed Selene's hand. But I also think your father would have trusted him, would have believed that promise meant something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked. Selene felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't know how to forgive him. Then don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Her mother stood up. But don't lie to yourself about what you feel. That's worse than any lie he told you. She left Selene alone with thoughts too heavy to carry. Bas. On the 10th day, everything went to hell. Selene was walking back from the grocery store when the car pulled up beside her. Black SUV, tinted windows, engine purring like a predator. Every instinct in her body screamed, run. She didn't make it 3 steps before the doors opened. 2 men, big, armed, moving fast. She tried to scream. A hand clamped over her mouth, an arm wrapped around her waist. She was lifted off her feet like she weighed nothing. The groceries hit the sidewalk. Apples rolled into the gutter. She bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth. Tasted blood. The man cursed, slammed her head against the car frame. Everything went fuzzy. When her vision cleared, she was in the back seat with zip ties cutting into her wrists and a gun pressed against her ribs. Move, and I put a bullet in your spine. The voice was cold, professional. Selene forced herself to breathe, to think. What do you want? Shut up. The SUV pulled away from the curb, merged into traffic, drove like it had every right to be there. Selene watched the neighborhood disappear through the window, watched her mother's house get smaller and smaller until it vanished completely. She'd been so stupid, thinking she was safe, thinking distance from Kael meant distance from his world. But you didn't get to walk away from men like him, not when you wore his ring, not when you carried his name. The drive lasted 40 minutes. They took her south, away from the city, into industrial areas where buildings stood empty and broken like abandoned teeth. Finally, the SUV pulled into a warehouse, the kind of place where people went to disappear. The men dragged her out, marched her across oil-stained concrete, shoved her into a room that smelled like rust and old blood. A single chair sat in the center, metal, bolted to the floor. They forced her into it, zip-tied her ankles, added more restraints around her chest. Then they left. The door slammed shut. A lock clicked into place. Selene sat in the dark and tried not to panic, tried not to think about all the ways this could end, tried not to wonder if Kael even knew she was gone yet. Quote. Kael was in the middle of a meeting when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then something in his gut twisted. He picked up. Yeah. Mr. Vucari, I have something that belongs to you. The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Mid-40s, maybe. Every muscle in Kael's body went rigid. Who is this? Someone you should have killed when you had the chance. A pause. Your wife says hello. The world stopped. If you hurt her, yeah. You'll what? Come find me? Kill me? The man laughed. That's exactly what I'm counting on. What do you want? I want you to suffer, the way my brother suffered when you put a bullet in his head 5 years ago. The voice dropped to something vicious. Mateo Colombo sends his regards. The line went dead. Kael was on his feet before the phone hit the desk. Victor! His second appeared in the doorway, took one look at Kael's face and went pale. What happened? They took her. Colombo's people took Selene. When? I don't know. Track her phone, now. Victor pulled out his laptop, fingers flying across keys 30 seconds later. Her phone's off. Last ping was near her mother's house 47 minutes ago. 47 minutes. She'd been gone for 47 minutes, and he hadn't known, hadn't felt it. Kael grabbed his jacket, started for the door. Boss, wait. We need a plan. We don't even know where. Then we find out. Pull every contact we have. Shake down every informant. I don't care what it costs. He turned, looked Victor dead in the eye. We get her back. Tonight. Victor nodded, already pulling his phone. Kael was halfway to the elevator when another call came through. Unknown number. Again. He answered. Where is she? Patience, Mr. Vucari. First, we're going to have a conversation. I'm done talking. Then your wife dies in the next 60 seconds. Kael froze. In the background, he heard it. Faint, terrified. Selene's voice. Kael. Then a sound like someone hitting her. A cry of pain cut short. Something inside him shattered. Stop. Don't touch her. Whatever you want. What I want is for you to feel what I felt. Watching someone you love suffer. Knowing you're powerless to stop it. Mateo's voice was pure poison. So here's how this works. You have 24 hours to turn yourself over. Come alone, unarmed. Surrender yourself to me. And maybe I let her live. And if I don't, then I send her back to you piece by piece. Kael's vision went red. Where? I'll text you the location. 24 hours, Vucari. Don't be late. The line went dead. Kael stood in the hallway with his phone in his hand and murder screaming through his veins. Victor appeared beside him. Boss? Call everyone. Every soldier we have, every favor we're owed, every weapon we can carry. His voice was ice. We're going to war. Not. Selene didn't know how long she'd been sitting in the dark when the door opened again. Light flooded the room. She blinked against it. A man walked in, older than her, maybe late 30s, well-dressed, calm. He pulled up a second chair, sat down facing her. Mrs. Vucari, I apologize for the rough treatment. My men can be overzealous. She said nothing. You're probably wondering why you're here. Still nothing. Your husband killed my brother 5 years ago. Put a bullet in his head over a territory dispute that didn't need to end in blood. He leaned forward. Do you know what that does to a family? Watching your brother's casket lowered into the ground while the man responsible walks free. No. Of course you don't. You're just the girl he married, the transaction, the pretty thing he keeps locked away in his tower. His smile was cold. But here's the thing. I've been watching you, watching him, and I've seen something interesting. Selene's pulse hammered against her ribs. He loves you, really loves you, which is unfortunate for both of you. He doesn't, don't lie to me. I've seen the way he looks at you, the way he's been drowning himself in whiskey since you left, the way he pulled half his security detail to watch your mother's house. Mateo tilted his head. A man like Kael Vucari doesn't do that for a transaction. Selene's throat closed up. So here's what's going to happen. In about, he checked his watch, 23 hours, your husband is going to walk through that door, alone, unarmed, and he's going to surrender himself to me. Why would he do that? Because I'm going to make him watch you die if he doesn't. The words landed like physical blows. And if he does surrender, then I kill him instead, slowly, while you watch. And then I kill you anyway. Mateo stood up. Either way, you both die. But at least this way, he gets to choose who suffers more. He walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, I almost feel bad for you. You didn't ask for this. Didn't ask to fall in love with a monster. But that's the thing about this life, Mrs. Vucari. It doesn't care what you ask for. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. Then he was gone. And Selene was alone again, with 23 hours left to live. Kael spent the next 12 hours turning Chicago inside out. Every informant, every contact, every rat who owed him a favor. No one knew where Mateo was holding her, or if they did, they weren't talking. By hour 15, he was ready to start burning buildings down until someone gave him answers. Victor found him in the armory loading magazines. We might have something. Kael's head snapped up. Talk. One of Colombo's lower guys, name's Petrov. He's got a daughter, 7 years old, diabetes, can't afford her insulin. Victor pulled up a photo on his phone. We make sure she gets what she needs. He tells us where they're keeping Selene. It wasn't a question. Kael grabbed his jacket. Let's go. They found Petrov at a bar on the south side. Pulled him into the back alley before he could run. I don't know anything. Kael slammed him against the brick wall hard enough to crack ribs. Your daughter, Maya, 7 years old, type 1 diabetes. You buy her insulin from a black market pharmacy because you can't afford the real thing. He leaned in close. How long does she last without it? Petrov's face went white. Please, how long? 3 days? Maybe 4. Wrong answer. Kael pulled his gun, pressed it under Petrov's chin. She gets a lifetime supply. Best doctors in the country. Full medical coverage. Everything she needs to actually survive this thing. Petrov's eyes went wide. What? In exchange for one piece of information. I can't. Your daughter lives. Or she doesn't. Your choice. You've got 10 seconds. Petrov was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. They'll kill me. I'll kill you right now if you don't talk. Kael. Victor's voice was quiet. Warning. Kael ignored him. 5 seconds. Warehouse District, South Side. Old textile factory. Building 7C. The words came out in a rush. But it's a trap. He's got 20 guys in there, all armed. He wants you to come. I know. Kael lowered the gun, looked at Victor. Get his daughter everything she needs, tonight. Victor nodded. Kael started walking. Boss? Victor caught up. It's a trap. I know. You're still going. Yeah. Alone? No. I'm bringing everyone. Every soldier we have, every weapon we can carry. Kael's jaw was set like concrete. Mateo wants war. We're giving him one. Hour 22. Selene had stopped counting time. Stopped trying to guess how long she had left. Instead, she sat in the dark and thought about her mother. About Kael. About all the ways her life had fractured and reformed in the space of 2 months. She thought about the moment Kael lifted her veil, the horror in his eyes. She thought about him holding her through nightmares, the way he'd whispered her father's name like a prayer. She thought about this photograph. The 2 men covered in blood, one dying to save the other. And she realized something that hurt worse than any physical pain. She loved him, even now, even after everything. She loved the broken man trying to keep an impossible promise. The door opened. Mateo walked in with 2 of his men. Time's up, Mrs. Vucari. Let's see if your husband values your life more than his own. They dragged her to her feet, marched her out of the room into the main warehouse floor. Overhead lights buzzed. Rusted machinery cast long shadows across oil-stained concrete. In the center of the space, they'd set up something that made Selene's blood run cold. 2 chairs, facing each other, both bolted to the floor. Mateo shoved her into one, zip-tied her again, tighter this time. Now we wait. Oops. Kael arrived at the warehouse with 20 men and enough firepower to level a city block. They approached on foot, silent. Weapons ready. Victor moved up beside him. Snipers in position, exits covered. We've got eyes on all entry points. How many inside? Thermal shows 22, maybe 23. Hard to get an exact count. And Selene? Center of the building, ground floor. Kael's jaw tightened. Anyone touches her before I get there, they die screaming. Understood. They moved closer, reached the main entrance. Kael's phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Come inside, Mr. Vucari. Alone, or I start cutting pieces off your wife. Attached was a photo. Selene tied to a chair, blood running from her temple, eyes wide with fear. Something in Kael's chest ripped open. "Boss?" Victor grabbed his arm. "Don't. It's what he wants." "I know." "Then don't give it to him. We go in together, fast and hard, extract her and burn this place to the ground." Kael looked at the photo again, at Selene's face, at the woman he'd failed to protect, at the daughter of the man who'd saved his life. "No. Boss, I go in alone. You wait for my signal. The second you hear gunfire, you breach. Kill everyone except Selene." He looked Victor dead in the eye. "No matter what happens to me, you get her out. You make sure she's safe. You promise me." Victor's face was grim. "Kael, promise me." "I promise." Kael handed over his weapons. All of them. Gun, knife, backup piece, everything. Then he walked through the door. The warehouse was exactly as cold and dead as he expected. Matteo stood in the center with a gun in his hand and Selene tied to a chair behind him. "Mr. Vucari, right on time." Kael's eyes went to Selene. She was alive, hurt, but alive. Their eyes met across the distance. She shook her head. "Don't." He kept walking. "I'm here. Let her go." "Not yet. First, we have a conversation." Matteo gestured to the empty chair. "Sit." Kael sat. Matteo's men moved in, zip-tied his wrists, his ankles, made sure he couldn't move. Now they were both trapped, facing each other across 6 feet of concrete. Matteo walked between them, smiling. "Do you know what it's like? Watching your brother die? Knowing the man who killed him is still breathing?" "Yes." Kael's voice was flat. "I do." "Then you understand why this has to happen." "I understand you're going to die tonight." Matteo laughed. "Big words for a man tied to a chair." "Not me." Kael's eyes were ice. "My men, they're outside. The second they hear gunfire, they breach. Kill everyone in this building. You really think you're walking out of here alive?" "I don't care if I walk out alive." Matteo pulled his gun. "As long as you die first." He turned the weapon toward Selene. "No!" Kael lunged forward. The zip ties cut into his wrists, drew blood. "Wait!" Selene's voice cut through the warehouse. "Wait, please." Matteo paused. "Mrs. Vucari, you have something to say?" "Kill me, not him." "Selene." Kael's voice was destroyed. "Don't. I'm the one you want to hurt him with, right?" Her voice shook but held steady. "So do it. Put a bullet in me. Make him watch. But let him live." "No." Kael was pulling against the restraints hard enough to dislocate his shoulders. "No, Matteo, listen to me. You want revenge. I get it. Take it. Put a bullet in my head. But she's innocent. She didn't do anything. She didn't even know who I was when we got married. Please." He stopped, because begging wasn't going to work. Nothing was going to work. Matteo was going to kill them both, and there was nothing Kael could do except watch it happen. "This is beautiful." Matteo looked between them. "You really do love each other. How tragic." He raised the gun, pointed it at Selene's head. Kael screamed her name, and Matteo pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse like thunder splitting the world in half. But Selene didn't fall, because Kael had done something impossible. He'd torn through the zip ties with pure desperate strength, launched himself forward, threw his body between the gun and Selene. The bullet hit him in the chest. He collapsed. Selene's scream tore through the warehouse like something dying. "Kael!" Outside, Victor heard the gunshot. "Breach! Now!" The doors exploded inward. Kael's men poured into the warehouse like a wave of violence. Gunfire erupted. Bodies dropped. Matteo's men didn't stand a chance. Matteo himself turned to run. He made it 3 steps before Victor put 2 bullets in his spine. The whole thing was over in 90 seconds. Selene was still screaming Kael's name when Victor cut her free. She dropped to the floor, grabbed Kael, pulled him into her lap. Blood poured from the wound in his chest. Too much blood. Way too much. "No, no, no." Her hands pressed against the hole, trying to stop the bleeding. "Kael, stay with me, please." His eyes opened, unfocused, struggling. Selene, don't talk. Save your strength. We're getting you out of here. You're going to be fine. I'm sorry. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. For everything, for lying, for... Oh, shut up. Just shut up. You don't get to apologize. You don't get to... Her voice broke completely. You don't get to die. Not now. Not after this. Not after... I love you. The words stopped her. She looked down at his face, at the man who'd just taken a bullet meant for her, at the promise keeper, the broken boy, the monster who'd never been a monster at all. I love you too, she whispered. So you have to stay. You have to fight, because I can't... Tears poured down her face. I can't lose you. I can't lose anyone else. Please, Kael, please. His hand came up, touched her face, left blood on her cheek. Keep the promise. No, you keep it. You stay alive. You... His eyes closed. His hand fell. And Selene screamed until her throat bled. The ambulance screamed through Chicago streets with sirens tearing holes in the night air. Inside, Selene pressed both hands against Kael's chest while paramedics worked around her with controlled urgency that felt like barely restrained panic. His pressure's dropping. Get another line in. He's coding. The monitor flatlined with a sound that made Selene's heart stop. No! She grabbed Kael's face. No! Don't you fucking dare! A paramedic pulled her back. Ma'am, let us work. Save him! They shocked him. Once. Twice. The third time, the monitor blipped back to life with a rhythm so weak it barely registered. Selene collapsed against the wall. Blood covered her hands, her clothes, her face, all of it his. Victor sat across from her. His own shirt was soaked red. His face was carved from stone. He's going to make it, Victor said. It wasn't a question. It was a command, an order given to the universe itself. Selene wanted to believe him. But she'd seen the wound, the blood, the way Kael's eyes had gone distant before they closed. The ambulance hit the hospital. Doors flew open. They wheeled Kael away so fast Selene barely had time to let go of his hand. A nurse tried to stop her from following. Victor showed his gun. She goes where he goes. The nurse went pale, stepped aside. They rushed Kael into surgery. Selene stood outside the operating room doors, watching through the small window as doctors cut him open and tried to pull him back from death. Hours passed like decades. Victor brought coffee. She didn't drink it. He brought food. She didn't eat. He tried to make her sit. She refused to move from that window, because if she looked away, if she stopped watching, Kael might slip through their fingers and disappear into whatever darkness waited on the other side. At hour 4, one of the surgeons came out, still in his scrubs, blood on his gloves. Selene's knees almost gave out. Victor caught her. Is he alive? Barely. The surgeon pulled his mask down. The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch, collapsed his lung, nicked his subclavian artery. We've stopped the bleeding, but the next 48 hours are critical. If he makes it through, he will. Selene's voice was steel wrapped around broken glass. The surgeon looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. ICU, room 3. But he's sedated. He won't know you're there. I don't care. She pushed past him. Found Kael in a room that smelled like antiseptic and death. Machines beeped around him. Tubes ran into his arms. An oxygen mask covered his face. He looked dead already. Selene pulled a chair up beside the bed, took his hand, the one without the IV. His skin was cold. You're an idiot, she whispered. A complete fucking idiot. Taking a bullet like that. What were you thinking? He didn't answer, just kept breathing, in, out. Each breath a struggle the machines had to help him win. You don't get to leave me. You understand. I just found you. I just figured out that Her voice cracked. That I love you. So you have to wake up. You have to survive this. Because I can't. She stopped. Because saying it out loud made it real. And if she made it real and he still died, she'd never survive it. So she just sat there, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Outside the room, Victor made phone calls, gave orders, handled the mess they'd left behind in that warehouse. 23 bodies. All Columbo's men. Mateo himself had died slowly. Victor had made sure of that. The cleanup would take weeks, the police would ask questions, money would change hands, evidence would disappear. But none of that mattered if Kael didn't wake up. Suspense. Day 2. Kael's fever spiked to 104. Infection setting in despite the antibiotics. Doctors rushed in, pumped him full of stronger drugs, talked in hushed voices about sepsis and organ failure and survival rates that made Selene want to put her fist through a wall. She didn't leave, didn't sleep, just sat there holding his hand while his body tried to kill itself. Her mother showed up at hour 36, took one look at Selene and went pale. "Oh, sweetheart, don't. You need to rest. You need to, I need him to wake up." Her mother sat down in the other chair, didn't argue, just stayed. They sat together in silence while machines breathed for the man Selene loved, and time crawled forward like something wounded. Day 3. The fever broke at dawn. Selene had finally dozed off in her chair when one of the monitors started beeping differently. Her eyes snapped open. Kael's vitals had stabilized, temperature down, heart rate stronger, oxygen levels climbing. A nurse came in, checked everything, smiled. "He's fighting. That's good." Selene wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to shake Kael awake and tell him to stop scaring her. Instead, she just held his hand tighter. "Come back," she whispered. "Please, just come back." Day 4. Kael's eyes opened at 3 a.m. Selene was awake. She'd been awake for 72 hours straight, running on nothing but fear and coffee. His hand moved in hers. She looked down. His eyes were open, unfocused, confused, but open. "Kael," he tried to speak. The oxygen mask muffled it. She pressed the call button. Doctors flooded in, checked him, asked questions he couldn't answer yet. Finally, they removed the mask, replaced it with a nasal cannula. Kael's first word was her name. "Selene, I'm here. I'm right here." His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. "You're okay." "Me?" She almost laughed. "You got shot. You died. Your heart stopped in the ambulance, and you're asking if I'm okay? Did I keep the promise?" Tears spilled down her face. "Yes, you idiot. You kept it. You saved me." His eyes closed. Good. Then he was out again, but this time it was just sleep, not death waiting at the door. Recovery was slow, brutal. Kael spent another week in the ICU, another 2 in a regular room, physical therapy to learn how to breathe properly again, occupational therapy to rebuild strength. Selene stayed with him through all of it. When nightmares made him thrash hard enough to tear his stitches, she held him still. When pain made him curse and throw things, she ducked and came back. When infection flared up again and doctors talked about additional surgery, she stood beside his bed and refused to let anyone touch him until they explained exactly what they were doing and why. She became a fixture, the wife who never left, the woman who'd walk through fire for the man in that bed. And slowly, Kael healed. His color came back. His strength returned. The machines got disconnected one by one until he was breathing on his own and his heart was beating without electronic supervision. 3 weeks after the shooting, he was finally discharged. Victor drove them back to the penthouse, helped Kael up to the apartment, left them alone. Selene got Kael settled on the couch, brought him water, pain medication, pillows to prop up his healing chest. He caught her wrist when she turned to leave. "Stay. I'm just going to the kitchen." "No, I mean stay. Don't leave again." She looked down at him, at the man who'd taken a bullet for her, who'd almost died keeping a promise to a ghost. "I'm not going anywhere. You left before. You lied to me before. I know." His grip on her wrist was gentle. "And I'd do it again. I'd lie 1,000 times if it meant keeping you safe. That's not how trust works. I don't care. I care about you being alive." His eyes were fierce despite the exhaustion. "Everything else is negotiable." Selene sat down beside him. "You're impossible. You loved me anyway." "Unfortunately." He pulled her closer, carefully. His chest still hurt like hell, but he managed to get his arm around her. She leaned into him, listened to his heartbeat, the one that had stopped and started again. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "In the warehouse. I love you. I know." Even though you're a lying bastard who hid the truth from me. I know. Even though you married me under false pretenses and manipulated the entire situation. I know. Even though you're a criminal who's probably killed more people than I want to think about. Definitely true. She looked up at him. Why? Why what? Why do I love you? You're literally everything I should run from. Kael's hand came up, touched her face, the same gesture he'd made in the warehouse when he thought he was dying. Maybe because I'd die for you. Maybe because I see you, really see you. Not just the scared girl who walked into my office, but the woman who slapped me hard enough to draw blood, who stayed by my bed for 4 days straight. Who loves hard enough to hurt? He leaned his forehead against hers. Or maybe because we're both broken and we fit together anyway. That's the worst reason I've ever heard. It's the only one I've got. She kissed him, gentle, careful of his injuries. He kissed her back like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Selene said, "We need to talk about your father." Kael went rigid. What? Your father, the one who ordered Nikolai's execution. Is he still alive? No, he died 6 years ago. Heart attack. Good. Selene, I'm serious. I'm glad he's dead. Because if he wasn't, I'd kill him myself for what he did to my father. To you. To us. Kael stared at her. You really mean that? Yes. Something shifted in his expression. You're terrifying. I learned from the best. He almost smiled. Then his face went serious again. There's something else you need to know. What? About Nikolai's death. About who really betrayed him. Selene's stomach dropped. You said it was someone in your organization. It was. But I didn't know who. Not until last year. Kael's jaw was tight. Victor found the evidence, buried in old files, covered up for almost 2 decades. Who was it? My uncle. Dmitry Vukhari, my father's younger brother. He was feeding information to the Russians. When Nikolai figured it out, Dmitry set him up. Made it look like Nikolai was the traitor. Got my father to order the execution before anyone could question the evidence. Where is he now? Dead. Victor put a bullet in him 8 months ago. Good. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Selene asked the question that had been eating at her since the warehouse. Would you do it again, if you could go back, knowing everything? Would you still marry me? Kael didn't hesitate. Yes. Even though it almost got us both killed, especially because of that. Because it means we survived, together. He pulled her closer. I've spent 18 years living with ghosts, carrying guilt that was never mine to carry, trying to keep a promise to a dead man. And then you walked into my life and suddenly what? Suddenly I had something to live for besides guilt and blood and old promises. Selene felt tears burning behind her eyes. You're going to make me cry. Good. You've earned it. She hit him, lightly, careful of his chest. Shut up. He laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. It hurts. Then stop saying things that make me want to hit you and cry at the same time. Can't promise that. They settled into comfortable silence. Selene's head on Kael's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them breathing in sync. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, something almost felt like peace. Then Selene's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Mrs. Vukhari, we need to talk. The voice was female, professional, cold. Who is this? FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen. I'm calling about your husband. Selene's blood went cold. What about him? We'd like to bring him in for questioning regarding the deaths of 23 men in a warehouse on the south side 4 weeks ago. He was in the hospital. We know. We've been waiting for him to recover, but now that he's been discharged, we need to speak with him. Officially. Selene looked at Kael. He was watching her face, already knew something was wrong. When? Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Federal Building downtown. If he doesn't show, we'll issue a warrant. The line went dead. Selene lowered the phone slowly. What is it? Kael asked. FBI. They want you downtown tomorrow for questioning about the warehouse. Kael's expression didn't change. Of course they do. What do? We go. I answer their questions. They have no evidence, no witnesses. Mateo's men are all dead. The warehouse burned. There's nothing connecting me to what happened except circumstantial bullshit. You almost died in that warehouse. As a victim, not a perpetrator. As far as anyone knows, Colombo kidnapped my wife. I tried to rescue her. Got shot in the process. Everyone else killed each other in the crossfire. He shrugged with his good shoulder. Simple story. Easy to believe. You've done this before. Multiple times. Selene should have been horrified. Instead, she just felt tired. What if they don't buy it? Then Victor has lawyers on retainer who eat FBI agents for breakfast. Kael pulled her closer. This isn't my first dance with federal law enforcement. It won't be my last. Don't worry about it. But Selene was already worrying because something about that phone call felt wrong. Something. The next morning, they drove downtown in Victor's car. Kael wore a suit that hid the bandages wrapped around his chest, moved carefully to avoid showing how much pain he was still in. Selene wore armor of her own, professional clothes, makeup to hide the exhaustion, hair pulled back in a way that made her look older, harder. They looked like a power couple heading to a business meeting, not two people who'd almost died together 4 weeks ago. The federal building loomed over them like a judge passing sentence. Inside, they were met by Agent Chen, mid-30s, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who missed nothing. Mr. Vucari, thank you for coming. Didn't have much choice. No, you didn't. She looked at Selene. Mrs. Vucari, you're welcome to wait in the lobby. I'm staying with my husband. This is a formal interview. Then interview him with his wife present, or we walk and you can explain to your supervisors why you let a victim of kidnapping and attempted murder leave without getting his statement. Agent Chen's eyes narrowed. Fine, this way. She led them to an interview room, concrete walls, metal table, chairs bolted to the floor. It looked exactly like an interrogation room, because that's what this was. They sat. Agent Chen placed a recorder on the table, pressed record. Interview with Kael Vucari regarding incident on November 14th. Present are Agent Sarah Chen, Mr. Vucari, and his wife Selene Vucari. She looked at Kael. You understand you're not under arrest. You're free to leave at any time. But anything you say can and will be used in a court of law. I understand. Good. Tell me what happened the night of November 14th. Kael told the story. Clean, simple, believable. Selene was kidnapped. He received a ransom call, went to rescue her, got shot. His security team responded with force. Everyone except him and Selene died in the firefight. Agent Chen listened without interrupting, took notes, watched his face the entire time. When he finished, she said, That's a nice story. It's the truth. Really? Because we have a different version of events. Kael's expression didn't change. What version? The one where you've been at war with the Colombo family for years. Where Mateo kidnapped your wife specifically to draw you out. Where you brought 20 armed men to that warehouse and executed everyone inside. She leaned forward. That version. Prove it. We have witness statements from 3 neighbors who heard sustained gunfire lasting approximately 90 seconds, consistent with a coordinated assault, not a firefight. Witnesses who were, how far away, in the dark? During a traumatic event? Kael's voice was ice. Good luck with that in court. We also have ballistics. 23 dead men, shot with 7 different weapons, all of which trace back to guns registered to your organization. Registered to my security company, which provides armed protection services. Legally. With proper licensing. And your men just happened to be there? Responding to a kidnapping, protecting their employer's wife, defending themselves when attacked. Kael shrugged. Everything they did was legal. Agent Chen's jaw tightened. You think you're untouchable. I think I'm a victim who survived an attempted murder, and I think you're wasting time interrogating me instead of investigating the man who kidnapped my wife and tried to kill us both. Mateo Colombo is dead. Exactly. Case closed. Not even close. Agent Chen turned to Selene. Mrs. Vucari, your husband has quite the record. Suspected involvement in racketeering, money laundering, murder for hire. Did you know this when you married him? Selene's voice was steady. My husband is a businessman. That's not what I asked. It's the answer you're getting. You were kidnapped by Matteo Colombo, held for nearly 24 hours, traumatized, threatened, and yet you're sitting here defending the man whose criminal activities put you in that position. I'm sitting here supporting my husband, who saved my life. By killing 23 people, by stopping the man who was going to kill me. Selene leaned forward. Agent Chen, I understand you have a job to do, but my husband is the reason I'm alive right now. He took a bullet meant for me. He almost died protecting me. So if you think I'm going to sit here and help you build a case against him, you're insane. Agent Chen stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned off the recorder. You can go, both of you, but this isn't over. We're building a case. And when we have enough evidence, we're coming for you, Mr. Vucari. And this time, no amount of money or lawyers or loyal wives is going to save you. Kael stood up, helped Selene to her feet. Looking forward to it. They walked out. Marshik. In the car, Selene finally let herself shake. That was close. That was nothing. Kael's jaw was tight. But she's right about one thing. They're building a case, and eventually they'll have enough to move. What do? We prepare. Get ahead of it. Make sure anything they find leads nowhere. He looked at her. But there's something else. What? She knew things she shouldn't know. Details about the warehouse that weren't in any report. Numbers, weapon types, timeline. His eyes were hard. Someone's talking. Selena's blood went cold. You think you have another traitor? I know I do. The question is who? Victor picked them up at the curb. Kael got in the front, Selene in the back. How bad? Victor asked. Bad. They've got someone inside feeding them information. Victor's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'll find them. Do it quietly. I don't want whoever it is knowing we're looking until we're ready to move. They drove back to the penthouse in tense silence. Inside, Kael went straight to his study, pulled files, made calls, started digging through his organization looking for the crack where information was leaking out. Selene watched from the doorway. This was his world. Violence and betrayal and constant vigilance. And she'd chosen to stay in it, chosen to love a man who lived like this. The question was, could she survive it? Yes, Shesin. 3 days later, Victor found the leak. Marcus Petrov, the same low-level soldier who'd given them the warehouse location. Kael had kept his promise, made sure Petrov's daughter got the medical care she needed, and Petrov had repaid that kindness by selling information to the FBI. They brought him to the penthouse at midnight. Kael was waiting in his study. Selene was in the bedroom, but she could hear everything through the walls. I'm sorry. Petrov's voice was shaking. They threatened my daughter, said they'd take away her medical coverage if I didn't cooperate. I gave you that coverage. Kael's voice was cold. I saved your daughter's life. I know, but they said, I don't care what they said. You made a choice. You chose to betray me, to put my wife in danger, to risk everything I've built. Please, Mr. Vucari, I'll stop. I'll tell them nothing else. I swear. You're right. You won't tell them anything else. A gunshot. Then silence. Selene sat on the bed with her hands over her mouth, trying not to be sick. She'd known what Kael was, what he did, what he was capable of, but hearing it was different than knowing it. 10 minutes later, Kael walked into the bedroom, blood on his sleeve, gun still in his hand. He looked at her. She looked back. Are you going to leave? He asked quietly. She should have said yes, should have run, should have chosen safety over this man who just killed someone in the next room. Instead, she stood up, walked to him, took the gun from his hand, set it on the dresser. Then she wrapped her arms around him and held on. No, I'm not leaving. He buried his face in her hair. His whole body was shaking. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I know what you are. And you're staying anyway? Yes. Why? She pulled back, looked up at his face, at the man who'd saved her, protected her, almost died for her, at the monster who loved her anyway. Because you're mine, and I don't abandon what's mine. Something in his expression cracked. He kissed her hard enough to bruise. She kissed him back with everything she had. And in that moment, Selene understood something that should have terrified her. She'd stopped being the innocent girl who walked into his office desperate and afraid. She'd become something else, something harder, something capable of loving a man with blood on his hands. The realization should have destroyed her. Instead, it felt like finally becoming who she was always meant to be. But before either of them could speak, Kael's phone rang. He looked at the screen, went pale. "It's the hospital. Your mother." Selene grabbed the phone. "Hello? Mrs. Vicari. This is Dr. Richardson. I'm afraid there's been a complication with your mother's treatment. You need to come immediately." The world tilted. "What kind of complication?" "Her cancer has spread aggressively. We're doing everything we can, but—" He paused. "You should come now." The line went dead. Selene stood there with the phone in her hand while everything inside her turned to ice. Kael was already grabbing his jacket. "Come on. Victor's bringing the car around." They made it to the hospital in 15 minutes, ran through corridors, burst into her mother's room. Her mother lay in bed looking 20 years older than she had a week ago. Machines beeped, tubes ran everywhere. Dr. Richardson met them outside. "The cancer has metastasized to her brain and liver. The treatment we've been using is no longer effective. We can try more aggressive options, but what?" Selene's voice was sharp. "But at this stage, we're talking about buying time, not curing the disease." "How much time?" "Weeks. Maybe a month if we're aggressive." Selene felt like she'd been punched. "What are her chances if we do everything?" "Less than 5%. "And if we don't?" "She'll be gone within days." Selene looked through the window at her mother. The woman who'd raised her alone, who'd sacrificed everything to keep her safe, who'd run for 18 years to protect her from the very world Selene had willingly walked into. "Do everything. I don't care what it costs. Try every treatment, every drug, everything." Dr. Richardson nodded. "I'll start immediately." He left. Kael pulled Selene into his arms. She stood there rigid, unable to cry, unable to feel anything except a rage so deep it burned. "This isn't fair." "I know." "She was getting better. The treatment was working." "I know." "Now she's dying, and there's nothing I can do." Her voice finally broke. Kael held her while she fell apart, right there in the hospital hallway, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the smell of death. And Selene realized something that made everything infinitely worse. She'd finally found someone to love. And she was about to lose her mother anyway. All of Kael's money, all of his power, all of his promises, none of it mattered. Because cancer didn't care who you married, it just took and took until there was nothing left. Selene spent the next 72 hours living between two hells. During the day, she sat beside her mother's hospital bed, watching poison drip through IV lines in a desperate attempt to kill cancer faster than it could spread. Her mother's hair fell out in clumps. Her skin turned the color of old paper. She could barely keep water down. At night, Selene went home to a penthouse where her husband was preparing for war with the FBI. Neither battle looked winnable. On the fourth morning, her mother woke up lucid for the first time in days, grabbed Selene's hand with strength that shouldn't have been possible, stopped the treatment. Selene's heart stopped. "What?" "I'm done. I can feel it. This isn't buying time, it's just making the end worse." Her mother's voice was weak but certain. "Let me go." "No." "Sweetheart, no, we're not giving up. The doctor said—" "The doctors are lying to make you feel better. I'm dying. We both know it." Her mother squeezed her hand. "But I need to tell you something before I go. About your father. About Kael. About all of it." Selene felt cold spread through her chest. "What about it?" Her mother took a shaky breath. "The night Nikolai died. He didn't just call me. He told me something. Made me promise never to tell you unless—" She stopped, coughed. Blood flecked her lips. "Unless you fell in love with someone from that world." "Mom, you need to rest. Listen to me. Nikolai knew he was going to die, knew someone had set him up. But before they took him, he made arrangements, left something behind. For you." Selene's pulse hammered. "What kind of arrangements? Evidence?" "Documents. Proof of who really betrayed him. Proof of everything the Vicari family had done for decades. Names, dates, crimes. Her mother's eyes were fierce despite the weakness in her body. He hid it somewhere safe. Told me where. Made me swear I'd only tell you if you were strong enough to use it. Use it how? To destroy them if they ever hurt you. To protect yourself if they ever turned on you. Her mother pulled her closer. He loved you so much, even though he barely knew you. He wanted you to have power, real power, the kind that comes from knowing where all the bodies are buried. Selene's mind was racing. Where is it? Her mother's voice dropped to almost nothing. Safety deposit box. First National Bank. Downtown branch. Box number 1847. The key is in my jewelry box at home, hidden in the lining of the bottom drawer. Mom, promise me something. Anything. If Kael ever betrays you, if he ever becomes like his father, if he ever makes you feel like you're trapped, her mother's grip tightened. You use what Nikolai left you. You burn that entire family to the ground. You understand? Selene nodded, couldn't speak. Her mother smiled, weak, tired. Good girl, now do me a favor. What? Get me out of this hospital. Take me home. Let me die somewhere that doesn't smell like chemicals and defeat. Selene's vision blurred with tears. I can't. Yes, you can. You're stronger than you think. You're your father's daughter. Her mother touched her face. And you're in love with a dangerous man, which means you need to be dangerous too. So take me home. Let me go peacefully. And then you do whatever you have to do to survive what's coming. What's coming? War. Between Kael and the FBI. Between the old world and the new. Between everything he built and everything trying to tear it down. Her mother's eyes were sad. And you're going to have to choose a side. Thanks. Selene brought her mother home that afternoon against medical advice and doctors' protests. Kael arranged everything. Private nurses. Pain management. A hospital bed set up in her mother's living room with a view of the garden she'd planted 20 years ago. Her mother lasted 3 more days. On the morning of the 4th day, Selene was holding her hand when her breathing simply stopped. No dramatic final words, no movie moment, just a woman who'd fought as hard as she could, finally letting go. Selene sat there for an hour before calling Kael. She's gone. He was there in 15 minutes, found Selene still sitting beside the bed, still holding her mother's hand, staring at nothing. Come here. She didn't move. Selene, come here. Finally she stood. Let him pull her into his arms, let herself break apart against his chest. I've got you. Everyone I love dies. Not everyone. My father, my mother, almost you. Her voice was hollow. What if I'm cursed? What if everyone who gets close to me? Stop. He pulled back, made her look at him. You're not cursed. You're just living in a world that takes more than it gives. But I'm still here. I'm still breathing, and I'm not going anywhere. She wanted to believe him. But standing in her dead mother's house, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was falling apart faster than she could hold it together. The funeral happened 3 days later. Small, private. Just Selene, Kael, Victor, and a handful of her mother's friends who still lived in the neighborhood. They buried her in a cemetery on the edge of the city, under an oak tree, next to a small headstone that simply read, Beloved Mother. No mention of Nikolai. No connection to that past life her mother had run from for 18 years. After everyone left, Selene stood alone at the grave. Kael waited by the car, giving her space. I found it, Selene said quietly to the freshly turned earth. The key, the safety deposit box, everything Dad left behind. The wind rustled through the oak leaves. I don't know if I should use it. I don't know if I can trust Kael enough not to. I don't know anything anymore except that you're gone and I'm alone and I'm so fucking tired of losing people. She wiped her eyes, stood up straight. But I promise you this. Whatever happens next, whatever I have to become to survive, I'll make you proud. Then she walked away without looking back. That night, Selene went to her mother's house alone, found the jewelry box, opened the bottom drawer, felt along the lining until her fingers hit something metal. The key was small, brass, worn smooth from years of her mother carrying it everywhere. Selene held it in her palm and felt the weight of everything her father had left behind. Evidence that could destroy the Vucari family. Evidence that could protect her if Kael ever turned. Evidence that made her dangerous. She should have told Kael immediately. Should have brought it to him. Let him decide what to do with it. Instead, she slipped the key into her pocket and drove to the bank. The safety deposit box was exactly where her mother said it would be. The clerk led her to a private room. Left her alone. Selene opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were three things: a USB drive, a letter addressed to her in her father's handwriting, and a photograph of Nikolai holding a newborn baby. Her. She couldn't breathe. She picked up the letter first. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges. But her father's handwriting was strong, clear. My little Selene, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. And your mother finally trusted you enough to give you this key. Which means you're old enough to understand what I'm about to tell you. I wasn't a good man. I did terrible things. Hurt people. Took lives. All in service to a family that never deserved my loyalty. But the one good thing I ever did was love your mother. And the one perfect thing I ever created was you. This USB drive contains everything. Every crime. Every deal. Every body. 20 years of evidence that could bring down the entire Vucari organization. I'm giving it to you not as revenge, but as insurance. If they ever come for you, if they ever threaten you, if they ever try to make you pay for my sins, you use this, you destroy them, you survive. Because that's all that matters. Your survival, your freedom, your life. I love you. Even though I barely got to know you, even though I failed you by dying, even though I'm not there to protect you, I love you, and I'm sorry. Dad. Selene read it 3 times. Then she picked up the USB drive. This small piece of plastic and silicone contained enough evidence to send dozens of people to prison, including Kael. She should have destroyed it, should have walked out of that bank and thrown it in the river. Instead, she put everything back in the box, locked it, told the clerk she'd return soon. Then she went home to her husband and pretended her entire world hadn't just shifted on its axis. Bob. Kael knew something was wrong the second she walked through the door. Where were you? My mother's house, sorting through her things. For 5 hours? There was a lot to sort. He studied her face. You're lying. I'm grieving. You're lying while grieving. He moved closer. What happened? Selene met his eyes, saw the man who'd saved her, protected her, almost died for her. Saw the criminal who'd killed someone in the next room without hesitation. Saw the husband she loved and the monster she feared in equal measure. Nothing happened. I'm just tired. Selene. I said I'm tired. She pushed past him, headed for the bedroom. He caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. Don't shut me out. I'm not. Yes, you are. You've been different since your mother died. Distant. Like you're preparing for something. His grip tightened slightly. What are you preparing for? She could have told him the truth. Could have showed him the key. The letter. The evidence that could destroy everything he'd built. Instead, she pulled her hand free and said, for the FBI to arrest you, for another traitor to sell you out, for the next person who wants revenge, for everything in your world that's trying to kill us. It wasn't entirely a lie. Kael's jaw tightened. I can protect you. You couldn't protect my mother. The words hit him like a physical blow. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. My mother is dead. My father was murdered. I'm married to a man who kills people in our home and expects me to be okay with it. Her voice rose. So forgive me if I'm a little distant. Forgive me if I'm trying to figure out how to survive in a world where everyone I love either dies or becomes a monster. I'm not a monster. You killed Petrov. He betrayed us. He was trying to save his daughter. And I was trying to save you, save us, save everything we've built. Kael's eyes were fierce. You think I enjoyed putting a bullet in that man? You think I didn't see his daughter's face while I pulled the trigger? I did. I saw it. And I pulled it anyway. Because in this world, mercy gets you killed. Hesitation gets you killed. Trusting the wrong person gets you killed. So you kill first. Yes. I kill first. I kill to protect you. To protect what's mine. And I'll keep killing until there's no one left who wants to hurt us. He grabbed her shoulders, made her look at him. I know what I am. I've never pretended to be anything else, but I need to know you understand, really understand. Because if you can't accept what I am, then this doesn't work. Selene stared at him, at the man she'd married, the man she'd fallen in love with despite every reason not to. I understand what you are. And I'm still here. Something in his expression softened. Why? Because I love you. Even though you terrify me sometimes, even though I know you're capable of terrible things, even though I should run as far away from you as possible. She reached up, touched his face. I love you anyway. He kissed her hard enough to bruise. She kissed him back with everything she had. And for a moment, the lies between them didn't matter. Only the truth of their bodies pressed together. Only the desperate need to feel something besides grief and fear. They made it to the bedroom, tore at each other's clothes, came together with a violence that matched the world outside. Afterward, lying in the dark with his arm around her waist and his breath against her neck, Selene wondered how long she could keep lying. How long before the evidence in that safety deposit box destroyed everything? How long before she had to choose between protecting herself and protecting him? The answer came faster than she expected. 2 days later, Agent Chen showed up at the penthouse with a warrant. Kael Vucari, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Kael didn't move from the couch, just looked at her with cold eyes. On what evidence? We have a witness, someone inside your organization who's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Selene's stomach dropped. Who? That's confidential. Agent Chen pulled out handcuffs. Mr. Vucari, stand up. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Kael stood slowly, winced slightly. His chest still hurt from the bullet wound. You're making a mistake. I don't think so. Agent Chen cuffed him. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights. Then exercise them. They led him out, past Victor, who stood rigid with murder in his eyes, past Selene, who felt her entire world crumbling. At the door, Kael turned, looked at her. Call the lawyers. Tell them to file for bail immediately. I'll be out by tomorrow. But his eyes said something different. His eyes said, trust me. Selene nodded, couldn't speak. Then he was gone, and she was alone with Victor and the sound of her heart breaking. Who's the witness? She asked. Victor's jaw was tight. I don't know, but I'll find out. And when I do, No. Selene's voice was sharp. No more killing. It's what got us into this mess. Then what do you suggest? Selene thought about the USB drive, the evidence, the power her father had left her. I suggest we fight smart instead of hard. The bail hearing happened the next day. Federal prosecutors argued Kael was a flight risk, a danger to the community, a criminal kingpin who'd evaded justice for too long. Kael's lawyers argued he was a legitimate businessman, a victim of overzealous prosecution, a man who'd been shot protecting his wife and was now being persecuted for defending himself. The judge set bail at $5 million. Kael was out by 6 p.m. Selene picked him up personally, drove him home in silence. Inside the penthouse, he went straight to the bar, poured whiskey, drank it in one swallow, poured another. They have someone, he said, someone close, someone who knows enough to bury me. Who? I don't know, but Victor's working on it. What happens if they testify? I go to prison for 20 years, maybe life. He looked at her. Unless we can prove they're lying, or discredit them, or make them disappear before trial, you can't kill a federal witness. I can if no one finds the body. Kael, I'm joking. But his eyes weren't joking at all. Mostly. Selene crossed to him, took the glass from his hand, set it down. There might be another way. What way? She took a breath. This was it. The moment where she either trusted him completely or burned everything down. My father left me something. Evidence. Against your family. 20 years of crimes, names, dates, everything. Kael went very still. What? He hid it before he died. My mother told me where to find it. I have it now, in a safety deposit box downtown. And you're just telling me this now? I wasn't sure I could trust you. And now? Now I'm choosing to. Because if we're going down together. She moved closer. But that evidence could be leverage against the FBI, against their witness, against anyone trying to destroy us. Kael stared at her for a long moment. You know, if you give me that evidence, I'll use it. I'll burn down anyone who gets in my way. I know. And you're okay with that? No, but I'm okay with surviving. She grabbed his shirt, pulled him close. I've lost everyone else. I'm not losing you too. He kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. Maybe she was. Tomorrow, he said against her mouth. Tomorrow, we get the evidence, figure out who the witness is, and we destroy them before they can destroy us. Together. Together. But tomorrow came with complications neither of them expected. Selene woke up at 5 a.m. to the sound of her phone ringing. Unknown number. She answered. Mrs. Vucari, this is Agent Chen. We need to talk. Alone. About what? About the evidence your father left you. About the choice you're about to make. About whether you want to save your husband or save yourself. A pause. Because you can't do both. Selene's blood went cold. How do you know about... We know everything, Mrs. Vucari. We've been watching you, following you. We know about the safety deposit box. We know what's inside. And we know you haven't told your husband yet. I did tell him last night, after weeks of keeping it secret, which tells me you're not sure you can trust him. Agent Chen's voice was cold. So here's the deal. You bring me that evidence. You testify against Kael, and we give you immunity, new identity, new life, everything you need to disappear. I'm not betraying my husband. Then you're going to prison with him, as an accessory, as a co-conspirator. We have evidence you knew about Petrov's murder, that you helped cover it up, that you're actively participating in criminal enterprise. Selene felt like she was drowning. That's not true. Prove it. Come in. Tell us everything. Give us the evidence and walk away clean. And if I don't, then we add your name to the indictment, and you spend the next 20 years in a federal prison cell wondering if loving Kael Vucari was worth destroying your life. The line went dead. Selene sat in the dark holding the phone and trying to breathe. Behind her, Kael's voice cut through the silence. How long have you been awake? She turned. He was sitting up in bed, watching her. Did you hear? All of it. His face was unreadable. The FBI wants you to flip on me. I'm not going to. You should. She stared at him. What? You should take the deal. Give them the evidence. Testify. Walk away. His voice was flat. Save yourself. I'm not leaving you. Selene. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting you play martyr because you think you deserve to suffer. Because you're carrying guilt about my father. Because you think you owe me some kind of sacrifice. She crossed to him, grabbed his face. I chose you. I chose this life. And I'm not walking away just because it got hard. This isn't hard. This is impossible. The FBI has a witness. They have evidence. They have resources we can't match. And now they have leverage over you. His eyes were fierce. If you don't take the deal, you go down with me. Is that what you want? To spend 20 years in prison for a man you've known less than 4 months? Yes. That's insane. Then I'm insane. She kissed him hard. We fight together. We use my father's evidence. We destroy whoever's trying to destroy us. And we survive. Together. Or not at all. Kael looked at her like she was the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen. You really mean that? Yes. Even if it means becoming like me? Even if it means crossing lines you can't uncross? Selene thought about her mother's words. You need to be dangerous too. Thought about her father's letter. You use this. You destroy them. You survive. Thought about everything she'd already lost and everything she refused to lose. Yes. Even then, Kael pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she could barely breathe. Okay. Then we go to war. Intact. They moved fast. By 8 a.m., they had the evidence from the safety deposit box. 20 years of crimes meticulously documented by Nikolai Marsek before his death. By 10 a.m., Victor had identified the FBI's witness, a mid-level accountant named David Rains who'd been skimming money from the organization for years and got caught. Chose testifying over dying. By noon, they had a plan. "We can't kill him," Selene said. "The FBI is watching him too closely." "Then we discredit him," Kael said. "Show he's been embezzling, that he's testifying to save himself from fraud charges, that his testimony is bought and paid for by immunity." Will that work? It might, if we can prove he's lying about the important things. And if we can't? Kael looked at the USB drive, at 20 years of evidence, at the weapon Nikolai had left behind. "Then we use this. Threaten to release everything unless the FBI backs off. Mutually assured destruction." "That'll make a lot of powerful people very angry." "Good. Let them be angry from prison cells." Victor leaned forward. "Boss, if we release that evidence, we're exposing ourselves too. Our operations, our people, everything." "I know." Kael's jaw was set. "But it's leverage. As long as they know we have it and we're willing to use it, they'll think twice about pushing too hard." Selene felt cold spread through her chest. This is really happening. We're really going to war with the FBI. "Not war, chess." Kael looked at her. "And you just gave us a queen they didn't know we had." The next 48 hours moved like a fever dream. Kael's lawyers filed motions, demanded evidence, challenged the witnesses' credibility. Victor dug up everything on David Rains, every debt, every lie, every skeleton hiding in closets the FBI thought they'd cleaned out. And Selene made copies of her father's evidence, distributed them to 3 different lawyers with instructions to release everything if anything happened to her or Kael. Insurance, the kind that kept people alive when they were standing too close to explosions. On the 3rd day, Agent Chen called again. "Last chance, Mrs. Vucari. The deal expires in 24 hours. "I'm not interested." "Then you're making a huge mistake." "Probably. But it's my mistake to make." She hung up. That night, Kael held her close and said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever they throw at us, I need you to know something." "What?" "Marrying you was the best decision I ever made, even if it costs me everything, even if we both end up in prison, even if this whole thing burns down around us." He kissed her forehead. "You were worth it." Selene felt tears burn behind her eyes. "Don't talk like we've already lost." "I'm not. I'm talking like a man who finally found something worth fighting for." She kissed him, slowly, deeply, like she was trying to memorize the taste of him, because tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow they'd play their hand, and either they'd win or they'd lose everything. There was no middle ground anymore, just survival or destruction. And Selene was done running from the fire. She was walking straight into it, with her husband's hand in hers and her father's evidence burning a hole in her pocket, ready to become exactly what this world demanded. A woman dangerous enough to survive loving Kael Vucari. A woman willing to destroy anyone who tried to take him from her. A woman who'd finally stopped being a victim and started being a player. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like putting on armor she was always meant to wear. Tomorrow, the war began. Tonight, she let herself have one last moment of peace, wrapped in Kael's arms, in the calm before everything exploded, knowing that when morning came, there would be no mercy, no forgiveness, no turning back, just 2 people against the world, fighting for a love that was born in lies and blood and impossible promises, but somehow, against every odd, had become the only thing worth dying for. Morning came with this kind of silence that preceded explosions. Selene woke at dawn to find Kael already dressed, standing at the window, watching the city wake up like a man memorizing something he might never see again. "You didn't sleep." "Couldn't." He didn't turn around. Kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. She crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, felt the tension coiled through every muscle in his back. And all the ways it could go right? "Haven't found any of those yet." "Then let me help you look." He turned, pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Whatever happens today, in that courtroom, after the lawyers finish talking and the judge makes his ruling, I need you to promise me something." "What?" If it goes bad, if they take me away, you don't wait. You use your father's evidence, you burn it all down, and you disappear. I'm not leaving you. Selene, I'm not leaving you. She grabbed his face, made him look at her. We do this together. We walk out together, or we burn together. Those are the only two options. His eyes searched hers. You really believe we can win this? I believe we're too stubborn to lose. He almost smiled. That's not a strategy. It's worked so far. This time he did smile. Small, tired, but real. Yeah, it has. That. The federal courthouse stood like a monument to justice that had never been particularly just. Selene walked through the doors with Kael's hand in hers and Victor 2 steps behind. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. She ignored all of it. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, federal agents, people who wanted to see Kael Vucari finally brought down. Agent Chen sat in the front row, watching Selene with cold eyes that promised consequences. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Morrison entered, an older woman with silver hair and a face that had seen every kind of criminal imaginable. Mr. Vucari, you're charged with conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. How do you plead? Kael stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. The prosecution may proceed. The lead prosecutor stood. A man named Harrison who'd made a career out of taking down organized crime. Your Honor, the government has evidence that Mr. Vucari has been running a criminal enterprise for over a decade. We have financial records, witness testimony, physical evidence linking him to multiple murders, including the death of Marcus Petrov 3 weeks ago. Kael's lawyer, a woman named Rebecca Stone who charged $1,000 an hour, stood immediately. Objection. The government has no physical evidence connecting my client to Mr. Petrov's death. No witnesses, no murder weapon. Nothing but speculation and the testimony of a man who's been granted full immunity in exchange for his cooperation. That man is David Raines, Harrison said, a former accountant for Mr. Vucari's organization who kept meticulous records of every illegal transaction for the past 5 years. A former accountant who was embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars, Stone fired back. Who got caught? Who cut a deal to save himself? Whose testimony is bought and paid for by the promise of immunity? Judge Morrison held up a hand. I'll hear the witness. Mr. Raines, please take the stand. David Raines stood from the prosecution's table. Mid-40s, thinning hair, nervous hands. He swore in, sat down, avoided looking at Kael. Harrison approached. Mr. Raines, how long did you work for Kael Vucari? 7 years. And in that time, what did you witness? Everything. Money laundering through shell corporations, bribes to city officials, protection rackets, murder. His voice shook. I kept records, documented everything, because I knew eventually someone would need to stop him. Liar. The word came from Selene before she could stop herself. Judge Morrison's eyes cut to her. Mrs. Vucari, another outburst and I'll have you removed. Selene bit her tongue, sat back. Harrison continued. Can you describe the murder of Marcus Petrov? I heard it happen. I was in the building. Mr. Vucari called Mr. Petrov to his penthouse. They argued about information being leaked to the FBI. Then I heard a gunshot. When I went downstairs the next morning, Petrov was gone. His daughter was pulled out of school that day. His wife got a payout of $50,000. He disappeared completely. And you believe Mr. Vucari killed him? I know he did. I saw the blood on his shirt the next day. I saw Victor dispose of the body. I documented all of it. Stone stood. Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine. Proceed. Stone approached Raines like a predator circling wounded prey. Mr. Raines, you said you documented everything. Where are these documents now? I gave them to the FBI. All of them? Yes. Including the records of your embezzlement? The $300,000 you stole over 5 years? Raines went pale. You didn't think we'd find out? Stone pulled out a folder, handed copies to the judge and prosecution. Bank records showing regular transfers from Vucari Holdings into an offshore account registered to your wife. Receipts for luxury purchases. A vacation home in the Bahamas purchased 6 months ago for cash. Harrison was on his feet. Your Honor, this is a distraction. This is context, Stone said. Mr. Raines isn't a whistleblower. He's a thief who got caught and cut a deal to avoid prison. His testimony is worthless. Judge Morrison studied the documents. Mr. Harrison, did you know about the embezzlement? We knew Mr. Raines had taken money. That's why we granted immunity, to incentivize his cooperation. So you rewarded a thief, let him keep stolen money, in exchange for testimony against a man who might be innocent. He's not innocent. That's for me to decide. Morrison looked at Raines. Did Mr. Vucari ever explicitly tell you he killed Marcus Petrov? No, but did you witness the murder yourself? No, but I heard. Did you see Mr. Vucari dispose of a body, handle a murder weapon, confess to the crime in any way? Raines was sweating. No, but I know what I saw. The blood, the way Victor acted, the payout to Petrov's family. None of which proves murder. It proves something happened, but not what. Morrison set the documents down. Mr. Harrison, unless you have physical evidence, this testimony is circumstantial at best. Harrison's jaw tightened. We have the financial records, the pattern of criminal activity. You have records of a man running a security company that sometimes operates in gray areas. That's not the same as proving murder. She looked at Kael. Mr. Vucari, do you have anything to say in your defense? Kael stood. Yes, Your Honor. Marcus Petrov wasn't murdered. He's alive, living in Seattle under witness protection, which the FBI arranged after he agreed to testify against me. The courtroom exploded. Harrison went white. That's not... It's true. Stone pulled out another folder. We have flight records. A signed affidavit from Petrov himself stating he was coerced by the FBI to fake his death and testify falsely. He recanted everything this morning. Agent Chen stood up in the gallery, face twisted with rage. That's impossible. Sit down, Agent Chen. Morrison's voice was ice. Mr. Harrison, is this true? Did you stage a murder to build your case? We relocated a witness for his protection after telling this court he was dead, after using his supposed murder as the cornerstone of your case against Mr. Vucari. Morrison's eyes were hard. You lied to this court. We didn't lie. We protected a witness by faking his death and allowing us to believe a murder had occurred. She turned to the bailiff. I want a full investigation into the prosecution's handling of this case, immediately. Harrison was sweating. Your Honor, we still have the financial crimes, the racketeering, the built on the foundation of a murder that never happened, and testimony from a thief who cut a deal to save himself. Morrison looked at Kael. Mr. Vucari, I'm dismissing all charges, with prejudice. You're free to go. The gavel came down. Selene couldn't breathe. Kael just stood there, like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Stone grabbed his arm. We need to leave. Now, before they try to refile. They moved fast, out of the courtroom, through the courthouse, into Victor's car waiting at the curb. The doors closed. The engine started. They were 3 blocks away before anyone spoke. How did you get Petrov to recant? Selene asked. Kael looked at her. I didn't. Victor did. She turned to Victor. How? I found him in Seattle. Told him his daughter needed better care than the FBI was providing. Offered him a real witness protection program, one we control. New identities, new lives. Medical care for Maya for the rest of her life. Victor's voice was flat. In exchange for the truth. And he agreed? He was tired of lying, tired of being a pawn. He wanted out. We gave him away. Selene looked back at Kael. And the FBI didn't know? Not until 30 minutes before the hearing when Stone filed the affidavit. Kael's smile was sharp. Sometimes the best move is the one nobody sees coming. They drove straight to the penthouse. Inside, Kael poured whiskey with shaking hands, drank it, poured another. We won. Yeah. The charges are dismissed. Yeah. So why do you look like someone died? Kael set the glass down, turned to face her. Because this isn't over. The FBI doesn't give up this easily. Chen won't let this go. Harrison will find another angle. They'll come at us again, harder, smarter. Then we'll fight again. For how long? How many times do we have to win before they stop? As many times as it takes. He crossed to her, pulled her close. I don't want this to be your life, constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next attack, never knowing when it's safe to breathe. Too late. This is already my life. Has been since I walked into your office 4 months ago. You could still leave. Take your father's evidence, use it to negotiate immunity, walk away clean. We've had this conversation, and we're having it again, because now you know what it's really like. The courtroom, the lies, the constant threat. This is what forever looks like with me. Selene grabbed his face, made him look at her. I know what forever looks like, and I'm choosing it anyway. Stop trying to save me from you. I don't need saving. I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. You're 21 years old, and I've already lost more than most people lose in a lifetime. My father, my mother, almost you. Her voice was fierce. So don't tell me I don't know what I'm choosing. I know exactly what I'm choosing, and I'm choosing you every single time. Kael stared at her like she was something impossible. Then he kissed her like the world was ending and she was the only thing worth saving. They made it to the bedroom, tore at each other with desperate hands, came together with the kind of urgency that came from almost losing everything. Afterward, lying in tangled sheets with her head on his chest, Selene said, I need to tell you something. What? I'm keeping my father's evidence, all of it, in case we ever need it. Kael's hand stilled on her back. I thought you were going to give it to me. I was. But then I realized something. As long as I have it, we have leverage, insurance, protection. She looked up at him. You don't get to be the only one keeping secrets to protect us. He studied her face for a long moment. You don't trust me. I trust you with my life, but I don't trust the world we're living in, and I don't trust that we'll always be on the same side. You think I'd turn on you? I think you'd sacrifice yourself for me without hesitation. And I think there might come a day when I need leverage to stop you from doing something stupid. She touched his face. So I'm keeping the evidence, hidden, safe, and we never talk about it unless we absolutely have to. Kael was quiet for a long time. Then, okay. Okay, you're right. We both need insurance, and if that insurance is you holding a gun to my family's legacy, so be it. He pulled her closer. As long as you promise never to use it unless you have to. I promise. They fell asleep like that. Two people who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to. Two people who'd survived impossible odds. Two people who were learning to trust through the only language they both spoke. Violence and survival and love twisted together until you couldn't tell where one ended and the others began. 3 months passed. The FBI left them alone. Agent Chen got reassigned after the scandal broke. Harrison lost his job. The case against Kael died quietly. Selene's mother's house sold. She donated the money to cancer research in her mother's name. Kael's organization stabilized. The traitors were gone. The prosecutors were defeated. Business continued. And slowly, carefully, they built something that almost looked like a normal life. Morning coffee. Late-night conversations. Weekends spent doing nothing except being together. Kael still had nightmares, still woke up screaming about Nikolai, still carried guilt like a second skin. But Selene was there, every time, holding him, reminding him he'd kept his promise, reminding him he was allowed to be happy. And gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. The guilt became something he could carry instead of something that crushed him. One morning, Selene woke up feeling wrong, nauseous, exhausted. She thought it was stress, grief, the aftermath of everything they'd been through. Then she missed her period. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter staring at her like an accusation. 2 pink lines. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what this meant. She was pregnant with Kael Vucari's child, with the child of a man who killed people, who lived in violence, who'd just been on trial for murder. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else. Hope. Fragile. Impossible. But real. She walked out of the bathroom, found Kael in the kitchen making coffee. I need to tell you something. He looked up, saw her face. What's wrong? She held out the test, hands shaking. He stared at it, at the 2 pink lines, at the proof that everything had just changed again. His face went white, then red, then white again. You're pregnant, yes. He set down the coffee, crossed to her, took the test from her hands like it was made of glass. How long? I don't know, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8. And you're... He stopped, started again. Are you okay with this? I don't know. Are you? Kael looked at her, really looked. At the woman who'd walked into his office terrified and desperate. The woman who'd become his wife, his partner, his reason for surviving, the woman carrying his child. Yeah. His voice cracked. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Then he dropped to his knees, pressed his forehead against her stomach, and broke apart. 18 years of guilt, 18 years of grief, 18 years of carrying a promise to a dead man. All of it pouring out in tears he'd never let himself cry before. Selene ran her fingers through his hair. Let him shake. Let him grieve. Let him finally let go of the boy he'd been when Nikolai died. You kept the promise, she whispered. You protected his daughter. You gave her everything. You saved her. You're allowed to be happy now. His hands came up, wrapped around her waist, held her like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart completely. I don't know how to be a father. Neither did mine. And he still tried. What if I fuck it up? What if I can't protect? Then we figure it out together, like everything else. He looked up at her, eyes red, face destroyed. I love you. I know. No, I mean, I really love you. More than I thought I could love anyone. More than I thought I deserved to love. You're... He stopped, breathed. You're everything. Selene pulled him to his feet, kissed him, tasted salt and grief and something that might have been joy. I love you too. Even though you're a mess. Even though you cry on kitchen floors. Even though you're about to be a father and you're terrified. I'm not terrified. You're terrified. Okay? I'm terrified. She laughed. He laughed. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, it felt like they might actually survive it. Not just survive. Actually build something worth surviving for. 7 months later, Selene went into labor at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Kael drove to the hospital like he was being chased. Victor followed in a separate car. Both of them looked like they were preparing for war instead of a birth. 16 hours later, their daughter was born. 6 pounds, 8 ounces, screaming loud enough to wake the dead. The nurse placed her in Selene's arms. She was perfect, tiny, red-faced, furious at being evicted from the only home she'd ever known. Kael stood beside the bed, staring, unable to move, unable to breathe. Do you want to hold her? Selene asked. I don't know how. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. She handed him the baby, carefully, like passing something infinitely precious. Kael held his daughter for the first time, looked down at her face, at eyes that hadn't decided what color they'd be yet, at tiny fingers that wrapped around his thumb like he was the only safe thing in the world. And something inside him that had been broken for 18 years finally started to heal. What should we name her? Selene asked. Kael looked at her, at the woman who'd saved him, who'd loved him, who'd given him a second chance at being human. Nadia, after my mother, and Elena, after yours. Nadia Elena Vucari. Is that okay? It's perfect. They sat together, the three of them, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and new beginnings. Outside, the world continued to spin. The FBI continued to investigate. Kael's enemies continued to plot. The violence continued to wait. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Only this. A family born from blood and lies and impossible promises. A family that shouldn't have existed, but did anyway. Our bouquet. 6 months after Nadia was born, Selene drove to the cemetery alone. She stood at her mother's grave, then walked to a second grave 50 feet away. Nikolai Marchek, beloved father. She'd arranged for the headstone herself, used money from her father's accounts that no one knew existed, given him the memorial her mother never could. I kept my promise, she said quietly. I survived. I protected myself. I used what you left me. The wind rustled through the trees, and I fell in love with Kael, I know you probably didn't mean for that to happen when you asked him to protect me. But it did. And he's... She stopped, smiled. He's good. He's broken and violent and carries too much guilt, but he's good. You'd like him, I think. I hope. She set down a photograph, one she'd found in the evidence. Her father holding Kael when Kael was maybe 16. Both of them bloody. Both of them smiling. We named our daughter after both grandmothers, Nadia Elena. She has your eyes, green, bright. She's only 6 months old, but she's already fierce, already stubborn, already knows exactly what she wants. Selene's voice caught. I wish you could have met her. I wish you could have met me. I wish so many things. She wiped her eyes. But I'm okay. We're okay. The promise you asked Kael to keep. He kept it. Better than you probably imagined. And now we're building something new, something that doesn't have to be defined by the violence that killed you. She stood, touched the headstone. Thank you for the evidence, for the protection, for loving me even though you barely knew me, for making Kael promise to keep me safe, for everything. Then she walked away, back to the car where Kael waited with Nadia sleeping in her car seat. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I'm okay. He reached over, took her hand. They drove home in comfortable silence, to the penthouse that had become a home, to the life they'd built from ruins. That night, after Nadia was asleep, they sat on the balcony watching the city lights. Do you ever regret it? Selene asked. Marrying me, everything that came after. Kael looked at her. Every day. She hit him. You're supposed to say no. I'm being honest. I regret every choice that put you in danger, every lie that hurt you, every moment you had to suffer because of me. He pulled her closer. But I don't regret falling in love with you. I don't regret keeping my promise to your father, and I don't regret building this life with you. Even though it almost killed us both, especially because of that, because it means we survived, together, against impossible odds. Selene leaned her head on his shoulder. I used to think love was supposed to be easy, safe, something that made you happy without complications. And now? Now I know love is messy, dangerous, complicated as hell, but it's also the only thing worth dying for, or living for. Kael kissed the top of her head. When did you get so wise? When I married a man who taught me that survival is more important than safety. I taught you that? You and my father. Between the two of you, I learned how to be dangerous, how to protect what's mine, how to survive in a world that wants to destroy me. That's not wisdom, that's trauma. Maybe. But it's also what kept us alive. They sat in silence, watching the city, watching the world that had tried to break them and failed. Inside, Nadia started crying. Selene stood, started to go inside. Kael caught her hand. I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but I do, more than anything. I know. And I'm sorry for everything, for lying, for the violence, for dragging you into this life. Stop apologizing. I chose this. I chose you, and I'd do it again. She smiled. Even knowing everything I know now, I'd still walk into your office, still agree to marry you, still fall in love with you. Why? Because you're mine, and I don't give up what's mine. She went inside to their daughter. Kael stayed on the balcony, thinking about Nikolai, about the promise, about the 18 years he'd spent searching for a little girl who'd grown into a woman strong enough to save him back. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Victor. Boss, we've got a problem. The Russians are moving into our territory. They're claiming we're weak after the FBI investigation, that we're vulnerable. Kael closed his eyes. How many men? 20, maybe 30, armed, serious. And they want what? A meeting to negotiate terms or war. Set it up, tomorrow night, neutral ground. Boss, I know, but this is what we do. We survive, we adapt, we keep fighting until there's no one left to fight. He hung up. Inside, he could hear Selene singing softly to Nadia, some lullaby he didn't recognize. Her voice was gentle, loving. Everything good in a world defined by violence. He'd brought her into this life. He'd married her, loved her, given her a child. And now she was trapped in the same cycle he'd been trapped in since he was 16 years old. Violence, survival, the constant threat of war. But looking through the window at her holding their daughter, he understood something he'd never understood before. Love wasn't about protecting someone from the darkness. It was about standing in the darkness together and refusing to let it win. Selene looked up, saw him watching, smiled, and in that smile, Kael saw everything. The girl who'd walked into his office terrified and desperate. The woman who'd slapped him hard enough to split their hearts open. The wife who'd stayed beside his hospital bed for 4 days straight. The mother holding their daughter like she was the entire universe. She was all of it, and she'd chosen him anyway. Not because he was good, but because together they were strong enough to survive anything, even love, even this impossible life, even the war that was always waiting just outside the door. Kael walked back inside, locked the door behind him, set the alarm. Tomorrow he'd deal with the Russians, with the threats, with the violence. Tonight, he'd hold his wife and daughter and pretend the world wasn't trying to destroy them. Because that's what survivors did. They found moments of peace in between the battles. They built lives worth fighting for. They loved hard enough to justify the blood on their hands. And they never ever gave up, no matter how many times the world tried to break them. Selene looked up as he approached. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's okay." It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that kept families together when the truth would tear them apart. She knew. He could see it in her eyes, but she didn't push, just handed him their daughter. Let him hold Nadia while she fell back asleep. And in that moment, surrounded by the two people he loved most in the world, Kael understood something profound. He'd spent 18 years trying to keep a promise to a dead man, trying to protect a daughter who didn't need protecting, trying to atone for sins that were never his to carry. And somewhere along the way, he'd found redemption. Not through sacrifice, not through suffering, but through love, messy, complicated, dangerous love. The kind that was born in blood and lies and impossible circumstances. The kind that survived anyway. The kind that made monsters into men and broken girls into warriors. Selene leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her hand over his heart. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "How do you know?" "Because we always are. No matter what comes, we always survive." Kael kissed her hair, held his daughter, felt his heart beating beneath Selene's palm, and for the first time since Nikolai died, he believed it. They were going to be okay. Not because the violence would stop, not because the threats would disappear, not because the world would suddenly become kind, but because they had each other. And that was enough. It had to be. Because in the end, that's all any of them really had. Love, survival, the stubborn refusal to give up, and the faith that together they could survive anything, even this impossible life, even the darkness waiting outside, even the future that promised more blood and more battles and more impossible choices. They'd survive it all, together, just like they always had, just like they always would.